Welcome to ABC English Talk Show, ABC Time. And this is Sinha MA Sayeed and calling this very talk show. Today, our point of focus shall be on political economy of currency hegemony, challenges, dilemmas, and opportunities. And for this very reason, we have invited four distinguished guests who have, by this time, achieved a global standing. And whenever they talk and speak, they speak like a person in the respective area. And let us meet with those persons. And first of all, let me introduce Dr. Jaidi Sattar, Chairman of Policy Research Institute, Bangladesh. He is from California at this very moment. Dr. Sattar, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you for inviting me.
Then Dr. Jamaluddin Ahmed, FCA. He is one of the leading economists and a chartered accountant. And basically, he is a very known person in the media world. How are you, Dr. Jamaluddin?
Fine, thank you.
Then Dr. Shaukat Ali. He is from America, New York, and former professor of Long Island University. How are you, Dr. Shaukat Ali?
Alhamdulillah, many thanks, all our distinguished panels. Thank you.
And finally, I would like to introduce Dr. M. Rajak, Chairman of Research and Policy Integration for Development. And he is at this very moment from United Kingdom. How are you, Mr. Dr. Rajak?
I'm fine, thank you. And thanks for having me on your show.
And thank you all. Now let us start the main issues here. And first of all, I will invite Dr. Jamaluddin Ahmed. You have seen by this time that our concern is political economy of currency hegemony, challenges, dilemmas, and opportunities. And as an economist, how do you analyze the thing in your own words and expression? Dr. Jamaluddin Ahmed.
Thank you. Thank you, all panelists. Everybody is from outside. Me and yourself is here from Bangladesh. I think this is a very controversial issue in this during this time, even earlier time also. We do not know that. Actually, it was a political economy of currency hegemony. This means the hegemony, sometimes we think that the political hegemony, sometimes now economic hegemony. So what is economic hegemony? If we see that whenever you have do the internal external business, then you have to maintain the foreign currency reserve. From that reserve, you pay. Money comes from US dollar or any foreign currency comes in Bangladesh through central bank Nostra account, and it enters as an export receipt. And at the same time, they are to pay the import bill from that money. So this is the way a reserve currency is established. So which reserve currency? The country who is the biggest economy, and at the same time they have got the corporate structure, stable, reliable, credible banking system, and credible stock market, and the credible judiciary credible and independent central bank, all these institutions help the government, that is the United States. And historically, if we see that previously the currency build-up was a period first from from 1450 to next 80 years. Portugal was the reserve currency. They used to maintain the reserve currency. This currency, they all hold the world, the import, export transactions and other transactions, foreign currency loan, everything was dominated by the Portuguese currency. Then it came at the Spain spent on almost 110 years. They were the colonial power. They have got the military might, political might, and everything. In that case, they used to control the reserve currency. So they become the reserve currency. That means the Portugal, then the Spain, 110 years. And then the Netherlands, 80 years. France, 95 years. And Britain, 105 years. When Britain used to control the whole world and in their colonial states, the sun, there is a proverb that the sun does not go out, it remains in their colony all the time. This is the way the British used to rule the whole world almost 105 years. Then the British pound sterling was the dominating currency, reserve currency, inverse currency, export currency, foreign direct investment currency, and foreign loan currency. This is the way they continued 105 years. Later on, in 1920, after the World War, America did not join the First World War. They have supported British and they have given loan. By that way, from 1870, United States, previously after their civil war, they started their internal industries and they entered into export market. But because of the British colonial bloc, the sterling bloc, they could not enter there. By that time, they understood that we should help British join the war and they become poor. In that was that was the idea. So in 1920, England lost the hegemony, currency hegemony. Then US dollar taken over in 1920. After that, it continued. In the Second World War, again they supported British and against the Hitler, and at the same time, they have given loan to England. And by that time, the loan condition, certain cases, they put the condition that you will have to make free your colonies, so that United States entered there to do their business and investment, foreign investment. In that way, America took over. And then during the Roosevelt time, after 1944, the Bretton Woods systems, they entered in the US dollar was pegged to different countries. So they are entering in the British colonies and the French colonies and other colonies, those Portuguese colonies everywhere. So this is the way USA captured the trade, import, export, both they become the trading nation. Meantime, in 1944, under the Bretton Woods system, they pegged the US dollar to all the countries, and they entered in those. Any country trying to do business with the United States or any other countries, then the US dollar was the dominant currency. They established that. After that, in 1975, when the Vietnam War and other wars, every colonial power changes. Every colonial power changed through war. Only British, they lost the economic power. They lost the economic power to the United States as a dominant country, reference country, and the transaction to establish the US dollar. So this way, they involved themselves in the Vietnam War and other areas in different countries. So at the end of the day, what they did in 1971, 15th of August, President Nixon, gold standard was dominating at that time. So he separated the gold standard. He said that no, there will be a fiat currency. Then the dollar, they will print the dollar, and then other people will and issue their bonds and different bonds. Then the foreign countries, they will buy there, and this will be established as the main dominant currency in the world. So after that, it happened in different stages. So this is the USA is the sixth largest country. That is the hegemony they are continuing on. This is the way they captured the economic power and at the same time the military power. They have got now almost 70 countries, 800 military installations. Based on that, they are dominating the politically, geographically, and monetarily. So this is the way the currency hegemony has come over. Now the China and other countries are getting in the front line, coming in the international business and other areas. So this is the way they establish that you will have to open US dollar LC, export LC, import LC, and all the transaction, these Visa and other companies. And this is very expensive. So every benefit goes to US dollars. And they earn 15.5%.
Kamaluddin, I come to you again. Dr. M.A. Rajak, you have a background, World Bank background, and you listen to what Dr. Jamaluddin uttered, emphasized, and echoes in his own mode and mood. What are your understanding about the trends of currency hegemony at this very moment?
Thank you so much. First, I would like to just correct ourselves and our viewer. I was never with the World Bank. I started off my career with Dhaka University Economics Department, but then subsequently I also served the Commonwealth Secretariat based in London. With that small clarification, let me now deal with the question that you have asked. Now, I was listening to Dr. Jamaluddin Ahmed. I mean, he has given us the history of how the US dollar became the dominant currency in the world. Briefly, prior to the World War I, it became quite obvious that the US has surpassed the UK or Great Britain in terms of the economic magnitude or the size, but still, the main transactions, the trade transactions were taking place in pound sterling. So that was the issue. But at the time, as all countries were maintaining the gold standard-based fixed rate, the problem was after the World War I, many countries, they realized that they couldn't maintain the fixed rate regimes against gold. So that is why they had to devalue, say. So every country was trying to devalue because they needed money to fund the war, to print more money. And at the same time, they were devaluing their currency. Now, when a country devalues, it means its exports can gain some kind of a bit more competitive advantage. That is why the countries, they do undertake devaluation. Then there was a policy of what we call the beggar thy neighbor policy. So I'm going to devalue more than my other trading partners, and thereby I'm trying to gain some kind of competitive advantage in global trade. So that was the kind of the fashion in those days. But the Great Britain, it was obliged to maintain some kind of fixed rate system, because everybody was trying to also compare their rates with the British pound sterling. But I think in the beginning of 1930s, it was no longer possible for the UK to maintain that fixed rate with the gold. So that is why, in a way, that fixed system couldn't operate. And then after the Second World War, as Dr. Jamaluddin has pointed out, we saw the Bretton Woods conference taking place. 44 countries were there, and there was a kind of unanimous decision that the currency that will be referred to in terms of global transaction is going to be US dollar. And by the time the US amassed, I think, the world's largest stock of gold. So that's how the system with dollar pegging began. Initially, if I may say, I think the idea was that for every dollar, the US is going to maintain the stock of gold in the ratio of, I think, 0.3 ounce, per unit of dollar. That was the kind of idea. In the 1960s, you see, it became a challenge for the US to maintain, that kind of, reserve. I mean, the dollar stock. The gold stock. Okay, so that is why also the US then faced a lot of challenges. Then the Vietnam War has been pointed out. Eventually, it was quite clear to the US that it won't be able to maintain that kind of rate against gold, and eventually the system kind of got dismantled. So that is the kind of brief idea of the whole system, how it evolved, and the US dollar being dominating. Okay. Now, let me also quickly tell you the current kind of the trends that we're seeing. Many people are now talking about the loss of US dollar hegemony, in the sense that we are also seeing the rising powers, like China has been pointed out, but also many other countries that have seen their economic growth taking place for many decades, and also the economic size growing up. But having said that, that is why there is some pressure on the United States dollar. But if you would think about the credibility of the system, then essentially for a global reserve currency, four things are critical. One is the overall credibility that the US dollar currently is providing to the system, right? Because it has been stable for a long time. It is a tested system that has run for many decades now. And also the US economy has always grown. Its performance has been quite robust, compared to many other countries. So that credibility is there. The second thing is about confidence. You ask all economic agents, perhaps they're more confident about the dollar rather than any other currency when you do the comparative assessment. So that's the kind of confidence. The third issue is the depth. Like, if you would like to buy any millions of dollars from many different places in the world, you will always be able to get it in physical cash. That might be a challenge, like if you're trying to buy, say, millions of yuan or any other currency. So the depth is not there for that currency. But also the final thing is about liquidity. You see, the US dollar itself doesn't come with the dollar that you see. It has the US has got a huge $25 trillion, the treasury market. And the beauty and the strength of the treasury market is any central bank, they may decide to hold the dollar in cash, or they just buy the treasury bills, you see. And when the central banks, they buy treasury bills, they also get interest rate, you see. So in a way, they're holding reserves, but also they are also earning money. But any point of their need, if they're going back to the US treasury market, and they can always sell the treasury bills, you see. That is the main strength of this dollar dominated system. And that is why I think despite the frequent buzz we hear about the collapse of US dollar, or the US dollar system is going down, I think the US dollar is surviving, and it is thriving pretty robustly, you see. And in my view, this is going to sustain even for many decades to come. We have seen some of the important changes taking place. If you would consider the ratio of reserves held by central banks, that ratio has fallen from say close to 72% in the late 1990 to currently about 59%. So pretty significant drop. But overall, the size of global reserves have grown. So that is why the US dollar is still kind of in a very large segment is being held as reserve. So that's one issue. If you look at the total trade transactions and the currency transactions, then US dollar currently occupies about 90% of all global foreign exchange transactions. So again, it's pretty robust. So that is I'm saying, despite all the crises, the rise of other powers, I would think that this dollar hegemony is going to sustain for several decades, in the future. I will stop there and see, what further my fellow panelists, they have to contribute to
Thank
this.
you very much,
Thank you so much.
Dr. Rajak. Now I would like to take resort to Ms. Dr. Shaukat Ali. You are a professor of economics and you have been teaching economics for a long time at Long Island University. You wrote many books on economics. You listened to the two speakers who spoke very well from their own standpoint, especially Dr. Jamaluddin narrated why the hegemony, currency hegemony is on. At the same time, Dr. M. A. Rajak, he explained the latest standing of the strength of dollar. What is
Uh,
your reaction, Dr. Shaukat Ali?
Many thanks. I'm very delighted to have joined actually with Dr. Sattar, Dr. Rajak, and my big brother Jamaluddin Bhai. Jamaluddin Bhai clearly gave a nice history briefly about the world, how the currency evolved and what steps, which year, how many 100 years, who influenced the world economy. Dr. Rajak has a lot of current affairs, which I agreed. Uh, the way he explained, I basically hold the same kind of views that the US dollar will continue in the name of what you call hegemony or abusing or dollar power or influence, whatever you call it, it will continue for a certain period of time until unless we find another kind of alternatives. Let's talk about the world GDP. The total GDP as of last year in the whole world, total output GDP in terms of dollar value, expressed in terms of dollar value, as we know, is $100 trillion for the first time in the world. It is now probably 100.3 trillion dollar. Out of this total amount, the United States alone contribute. I just round it up, almost one third. It's not exactly one third of the total GDP. In the world, say for 100 trillion total GDP size, it's a one third. Obviously, you express this GDP value, as we know in economics in general, it's in terms of stable currency, which is dollar. Now, it is always better if we can find some kind of alternative. It is better, but that is if we expect. But the reality is totally different. As Jamal Bhai said, Dr. Rajak also mentioned, you see, all started after the Second World War. So there is a lot of politics, military strength. And after the political military strength, there is, of course, economic strength, which is dollar is creating some kind of influence all over, not only Europe, all over the world. The European Marshall Plan, as you know, that trillions of dollars United States alone invested to recover the devastating result of the Second World War of Europe. And in that time, they have a problem also domestically. Don't forget about 1930s Great Depression and afterward. They have their domestic problem, huge problem. But they invested this money, excuse me, with a great hope that it will come back somehow. Somehow. Uh, I would say thank God, because at that time they have a balance of payment is highly. It's a current account was deficited, and balance of payment is in favor of all other countries. They have also big deficit. Somehow, as we said, just a simple discussion, it should be compensated by somebody. United States at that time found that it could be Europe or could be Asian countries could finance somehow this big trade gap, which is in terms of current account deficits. And in that case, as Jamal Bhai mentioned, Dr. Rajak mentioned, they take the advantage, given the world condition, that is their economic influence. The influence, the dollar became the dominant currency in the world. They export more all over the world, and basically they import. But that import there is very cheaper from the Europe or Asian African countries. In that case, their current account balance then and there go highly favorable in terms of international trade in favor of the United States. So slowly they get the economic influence, the dollar dominance, and their, of course, political and martial strength around the globe. And it is continuing. Now, let us very soon, say after 2090s, the 91, particularly the Soviet Union became the federation of the Soviet the republics. After that, the China became already in 1980s, after the death of Chairman Mao. The China also became some kind of global. Well, that time economically was just they are rising. It's not countable in terms of any financial strength. However, slowly they follow basically the open market economy, though it is a restricted government control economy, whatever you can say it, but it is not a communist economy. After the benefit China getting, Russia somehow they follow the same kind of pattern. With that, the other players in Asia, Africa, they also follow this some kind of open market policy. I would not say it is open market economy or economic policy, but to a certain liberal economic policy, and they get benefit out of it. Not their old system, not their old kind of restricted economy, control economy, centralized plan economy. They follow some kind of mix-up of free economy, and they get benefit out of it. They have a very good financial strength, say for BRICS. The Brazil, Russia, India, China, and then you can say probably South Asia, South Africa, they get the benefit out of it. And they're thinking how to get the share from the United States, very in a very precise term. Or because of the US, to me, sometimes I call it a misguided policy. Political terms, I can say it's abusing of dollar terms, dollar influence, which is not probably the right one. But economically, I can say it is an influence of the dollar. They impose on, we see that very recently on Russia. They did also even Turkey. They did China. They did any country, Brazil. Venezuela. They did also some of the African countries. They don't like it. Therefore, they are trying to find out some kind of alternatives. But what kind of alternatives we can get it? If we say the dollar is not serving the purpose of the world welfare or economic benefit, then I have to find out another better benefits or economic flexibility. Now, Said Bhai will like it because he always discusses with political economy. Now, look, we have little bit experience with China. The currency's yuan is not flexible. It's completely controlled by Bank of China, the Chinese government central bank. You go Russia, it will be the same thing. Brazil is just rising, under President Lula, is to a leftist government. We don't know what will happen after 5 years. India, well, if we remember, during the Jawaharlal Nehru or Indira Gandhi, it was very restricted control economy. As we know, if you read the history of Indian economic development, we can see the country was not free. Later on, Congress did follow not the centralized plan economy. Well, it was basically based on Russian model, the India economic growth. Well, they get benefit out of it, of course. For example, they impose a huge tariffs on any foreign products. On the other hand, they give very nice incentives, subsidies. The domestic production of Indian producer. You will be surprised. At that time, Pakistan was, of course, highly linked with the dollar, currency or United States or the free world. And President Ayub Khan was that time, while the president had did very good within very short period of time. They came back much, far away from India to Pakistan, including East Pakistan. All the.
Dr. Shaukat, I will come to you, please. I will come to you.
1 minute, that thing. Therefore, it is always better to find out any alternatives. My question that we should not do in the name of so-called hegemony, United States to somewhere else and damage the whole world economy. As Dr. Razak said, that we have certain stability as of now. Therefore, you have to be careful to find out any other kind of alternatives. Of course, we have to think about their flexibility, their market policy, their, of course, economic structure, political structure of that particular areas or geographical areas or that particular country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shaukat. You spoke very well. Well, Dr. Jaidi Satta, you are chairman of PRI, Policies Institute, one of the leading think tanks in Bangladesh, especially research oriented. And you have seen very closely the economy is developing and so many anomalies and so many things. And now the Bangladesh is also passing through critical stage. How do you analyze all these things, taking the stocks of all the three speakers, please? Dr. Jaidi Satta.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha, for inviting me and particularly listening to the experts and the panelists, fellow panelists before me. I have got a heavy dose of the history of international reserve currency, international payments currency. And I don't probably need to dwell on history any further. So I should try and discuss the current issues related to this, this subject matter, which has become quite intense in debates and discussions in the media as well as in academic and research circles. And definitely Bangladesh has a promising history, has been deemed as a successful case of development, and it's looking forward to maintaining its growth and development trajectory. And therefore, any development, global development, simply because Bangladesh is a trading nation and has been successfully leveraging the global market for its own rapid growth and development. So therefore, any development in the global market that could upset the rules-based world economic order that we have learned to live with for over 70, 75 years, that could also create problems for Bangladesh. So Bangladesh has to navigate through what one might call these choppy waters of geopolitical developments that are intricately related to geoeconomics as well. And it does create challenges, but it also creates opportunities for a country like Bangladesh. So let me, first of all, I have an issue with the term that we are using here, hegemony. It's a pejorative term to describe power in a sense that tells us that power is being used to undermine competition or any sort of alternative development. And I would like to suggest here that the US dollar, which is an international payments currency, an international reserve currency, and you've already heard the numbers. 58 latest estimates suggest 58% of all foreign exchange reserves are now being maintained in US dollar. It used to be more than 75% in the year 2000. And so there is already a decline in the use of the dollar as a reserve currency, but as a payments mechanism. As Dr. Razak pointed out, it's huge. It's huge. It's still above 70-75% if anybody is estimating. And when you talk of all the payments transaction that goes on through the SWIFT system and through the credit card system, I mean, dollar is the predominant currency, not just as a reserve currency, but as a payment currency. So let's accept that fact. So why are we talking about alternatives? That has to do with geopolitical developments. Okay, and it would be useful to take some of those fundamental points that Dr. Razak pointed out. What is required for a currency to be so widely acceptable, to become a predominant currency for all international transactions and for maintaining reserves? I would add to his 3 or 4 fundamental points to say that what kind of, not only that the economy has to be robust and a power in the world market, but what kind of government, what kind of social setup does that does that currency gets the backing of, and how much of freedom does the monetary authority in that country have in managing not only the exchange rate, but also overall management of the monetary system. And that is where a democratic process where monetary authorities are not managed by authoritarian governments, that makes a strong argument for the credibility and reliability of a currency. So that, I think, is a fundamental requirement for any currency to become an internationally accepted payment currency or reserve currency. So that's. I just wanted to add that credibility part. What makes a currency so credible that everybody accepts it? And it's a convertible currency, of course. It has to be a convertible currency to start with. Now, talking about hegemony doesn't really resolve the issue. There is an issue of facilitating trade. In the post-war period, Bretton Woods system, the goal was to create an atmosphere of global trade which is free and growing. And the system that was set up, which was the global trade order for 70 years, actually facilitated trade and facilitated income growth, also poverty reduction. So all of this was part of this rule-based system, which has come under some question, some threat, because of certain geopolitical developments. Now, all of us see that the peace dividend that was supposed to come out of the end of the Cold War, that has now ended. So the peace dividend is gone. The new geopolitical developments, particularly the one that has come after the launch of the Russia-Ukraine war, has accentuated the fragmentation that was already happening since about 2015. We have lived with greater globalization, greater global integration of economies around the world that has benefited, that has created a lot of efficiency dividends around the world that generated higher income, greater poverty reduction. That order seems to be now has developed some cracks in the system. That's how we are describing what the geopolitical evolution is had the kind of impact these geopolitical developments are having on economies. And because of these, we're getting a fragmented world compared to a world of global integration. And that is not going to help economies. But Bangladesh, for instance, is an economy that has leveraged the world market under this rules-based system. That is not, it's not going to be helped by these fragmentation, as they call it, of the world economic system. However, Bangladesh should also not be left aside, because there are going to be opportunities within this fractured system, within these evolving geopolitical order. But it needs, walking a tightrope in the arena of geopolitics. Okay, so there is a diplomatic exercise that needs to be taken on the part of Bangladesh in order to be a gainer in this geopolitical development. And I think here the fundamental statement made by father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, about having friendship with all and malice to none. And that has become, I think, the principle that is now being followed by the government. And I think that is one principle that is going to serve in good stead for Bangladesh in navigating through this choppy geopolitical waters of the world.
Thank you very much. Dr. Jaidi, I will come to you.
Very well.
Dr. Jamaluddin
I'll
Ahmed.
wait to hear.
Yeah. Dr. Jamaluddin Ahmed, you listened to the speeches of all the three speakers, and they were very much vocal about the concept of hegemony. And rather, they choose the word dominance. Having this in mind, how do you analyze the political economy in Bangladesh? At the same time, macroeconomic standing, which means fiscal policy, monetary policy, and exchange rate. Dr. Jamaluddin.
With this developments. I think why I am saying the hegemony, because of these things, there is a repercussion in the alternate other groups. Say, for example, many economists, they are suggesting that de-dollarization may take place, and you see BRICS and ECB. If we analyze the formation of ECB now their share originally when they were built up. At that time, they used to control they used to share the world reserve 30%, but now it has gone down after 20%. Why? Because all these central banks, they have got every European Union member countries, they have got their central bank. At the same time, ECB. So, contrary to that, the United States, they have got the 52, states, one Federal Reserve System. So this is regulating the whole 52 units in a similar way. So that's why they are strong. But when you come to the EU, why you are not getting successful? Because they have got the ECB central bank's rules and regulation. At the same time, they have got their own constitutional requirement. So there is a tussle between that. And European Union cannot decide, ECB cannot decide, take the decision in a single tone. No. They will have to discuss with all the member countries. In the United States, it is different. That's why falling them out, many people think, the economists think that the China or Russia, if they become, and BRICS, they become a strong alliance, and that this will be, it may not be successful. If we compare, SARC was created in 1984, but it was run by the government bureaucrats, different countries, bureaucrats. And the people, the agenda they set, that does not tally with the politicians. You need to have the meeting of minds of the politicians so that once they are united, in that case they can take any decision and then implement that. But the bureaucrats, they decide they cannot do that. I think last month, there was a conference in Dhaka, CPD organized. These old bureaucrats, they brought them out in Dhaka. They were discussing about the SARC. I said, in an interview, I said that it will not be successful because the meeting of minds of the politicians, if they do not become united, in that case, whatever the bureaucrats thinks, it will not implement it. That is the difference between Federal Reserve System and the European Central Bank. So in BRICS will also maybe like that. It is an encouraging attempt, but to implement that, there is less unity among themselves. That's why I use the term hegemony, that it will continue, and you cannot throw United States US dollar dominance in a short time. No, it will take long time, but it must be articulated, united, and believer. You say something, one government decides this thing, next government does not agree to that. But in the United States, there is a principle that once the Democrat decides something, next time Republican does not change it. And the institutions, They have got the institutional credibility, Federal Reserve System, Securities and Exchange Commission, banking regulation, so many things. Everything is in line, in order. That's why they can take the decision, and outside world has faith on that, trust on them, and because of their credibility of the rules and regulation, and their judicial system is not intervened. The Securities and Exchange Commission is not intervened. Central Bank is not intervened. And Competition Commission is not intervened. So they are institutions to run the government. They are running actually the government. Because the politicians are at the decision level. At the end of the day, they decide. But all the people there, the institutions, the purpose for which it was created, they are functioning well and serving the nation. But in case of Bangladesh or any other countries, it does not. That's why you see in India, the recent scandal with one group and many scandals in Bangladesh. Why it is happening? Because their rules and regulation institutions are well functioned and well organized, and they do not compromise. That's why the US hegemony will continue for next, and some people they say that 230 it will be 110 years. 110 years, no, maybe it will be more, because once their institutions are working, functioning well, organized well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jamaluddin. Dr. M.A. Rajja. Dr. Jamaluddin wanted to prove that he is talking not in the mode of deductive logic. Rather, he tries the level best to put it on logic, which is inductive logic. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. Having reference to all these things, what is your understanding about the ongoing economy in Bangladesh, please? Especially the banking sector, in the revenue sector, and also in the infrastructure sector. Well,
thank you. I think what I'm going to do, I believe I would like to sort of restrict myself, also to the subject matter of this discussion, because I think the issues that I heard from, Dr. Jamaluddin Ahmed and also from Dr. Shaukat Ali and Jayadi Sattar was kind of a learning experience for me. So I would like to add a little bit of perspective to what I heard from, especially from Dr. Jayadi Sattar and Dr. Shaukat Ali. I think Dr. Jayadi Sattar has raised a valid point, and I'm not going to take any side, like whether we should be calling it a hegemon or maybe a softer interpretation. The way I would interpret hegemony is something like where a dominant power or force has been established, and that force can also provide leadership, and sometimes that force can also be used to serve the dominant power, you see. And I think in the case of US dollar, everything is happening, and many would argue that has benefited the US economy tremendously. So, but having said that, without getting into the definitional complexity, let's consider a currency like a dominant currency, and which is the US dollar. I think that we all can agree on. Now, next, I would like to the brilliant idea that Dr. Shaukat Ali was kind of referring to understand the political economy of, either you call it de-dollarization, or why some countries are also trying to establish themselves as a preferred reserve currency, especially the rising ones. And there is a significant political economy considerations there. Sometimes we discuss about the reserve currency issue, but we tend to forget, you see, the real attractiveness of being a reserve currency. When a currency becomes a reserve currency, so that means that particular country issuing the currency can also benefit from the purchasing power, that it generates just by printing the money. You see. Imagine a situation now that the US, if the total reserves, say Bangladesh Bank, a small country, Bangladesh, relatively speaking, and it is holding $20 billion worth of USD in central bank's vault. And in a way, that would imply the US was able to purchase, $20 billion worth of goods and services from Bangladesh, almost doing nothing, just by printing money, you see. Now, in the multipolar world system, we're seeing many other countries have also become pretty big, economic powerhouses, including BRICS, but also countries like, Saudi Arabia and many others, they also think they have got a sizable economy. Now, they would also like to take advantage of the situation when other countries will try to accept or will accept their currency as reserve currency. So in that way, they will also be able to benefit from generating purchasing power just by printing money. So that is the thing. So that is why we're seeing that in the process, India and China, they are kind of aggressively pushing their currency to be used in local, settlements between countries. So that is the kind of political economic motive at this moment. For China, the motive is even greater because it considers itself now as a kind of a rival to the US economy. You see. So there are two portions. One is for many of these countries, they want to benefit solely from just by printing money, making sure other countries are holding their currency as reserve. But maybe in other areas as well, countries like China and India in particular, they also have the ambition of establishing themselves either as a regional power or as global power. So both two things are also linked with this particular, the currency issue that we're looking at. Now, Dr. Sinha Sayeed, you have now asked me to also link it with the Bangladeshi interest here. And I'm not going to get into the institution like, how the central banks, works here or the fiscal or monetary policy roles. But here is the thing. So what is our interest? Now, if India and China, they are pressing Bangladesh to settle some of the bilateral trade that we do with India and China, say in local currency, and we call it, the terminology that we use for this, local currency settlement. So in the context of Bangladesh and India, we can settle a portion of our trade using our own currency, right? Now, what is the benefit? And you have seen Bangladesh has already introduced a system where part of the settlement will take place using the Indian rupees. We have seen that arrangement is taking place. Now, if you would consider the trade between the bilateral trade between India and Bangladesh, then from India, it exports about, I think, close to anything between 12 and $16 billion worth of goods and goods to Bangladesh. And in return, I think last year we could export only about $1.8 billion. Now, one advantage is this, whether we can have the settlement in local currency, Indian rupees, rather than considering the US dollar. In that case, I mean, we can always infer to the fact that only maybe the amount $1.8 billion that Bangladesh has exported to the India, and if we are going to receive that money in the Indian rupees, then that defines our capacity of settling the amount of trade in Indian rupees. Okay, more or less, roughly. So roughly, we're talking about we could settle $2 billion worth of trade with India using Indian rupees. And what is the benefit of Bangladesh in that case? The benefit of Bangladesh will be, in general, many people will tell you that there is a kind of two conversion cost, we use. So from Bangladesh taka to US dollar, when you convert and you pay transaction fee. And then again, from say Indian rupees to Bangladesh taka, there could be another, conversion fees. So if we kind of, do the local currency level settlements of that $1.8 billion of, bilateral trade, then perhaps Bangladesh will benefit from that amount of transaction cost. That can be worked on maybe if a few $1 million, maybe I don't know, something around $10 or $15 million. That will be our net gain in terms of that transition taking place. But over time, you see, the Indians' interest is this: the more and more this kind of trade takes place, and India is going to invest more into Bangladesh, perhaps they will be able to take advantage of this local currency trade. And eventually, if Bangladesh Bank is going to decide that, since about say 15 or 20% of our trade takes place with India, and we're going to have that much of reserve in Indian rupees, then in a way, the first political economy gains for India, having more reserves in Indian rupees into the Bangladesh bank, that's sort of interesting. The same thing goes for the Chinese yuan as well, you see. And with China as well, in some discussions going on to have some of the settlements in Chinese currency, and that has started taking place, you see. So that is the small thing. But now, I would like to briefly touch upon one extremely important issue that Dr. Jayadi Sath has pointed out. It's about fragmentation, you see. The geopolitical tension, whether you call it de-dollarization or other areas like the war we are seeing in the technological fronts, with the consequences that we are seeing in terms of having established clear trade rules, a lot of tension going on between the West and China in particular. That kind of fragmentation is really, really bad for an economy like Bangladesh. Fragmentation is like creating conflicts. The rules will not be clear. That's number one. The cost of trading might be higher. That's the second thing. And the third and more important thing is the increased uncertainty. And uncertainty is also about how we are going to deal with the superpowers. Sometimes these days, to attract investment into Bangladesh, which is our prime objective, we want to benefit from the foreign direct investment flow, then we need to be careful about where the investment is coming from. Is it from China? And then how India is going to react, how Japan or the US is going to react, you see. And that is not good for a country like Bangladesh. An emerging economy has done so well in the past and would like to grow further. And we are now being, put into that situation where uncertainty becomes a very major, constraining factor for us. So overall, the way I say this is, in general, with the rise of other global economies, BRICS and other nations, there will be that kind of alternative arrangements, that Dr. Shaukat Ali was pointing out, probably will take place. Some of will be tested and tried out, and eventually we'd like to see if any such system can survive, can thrive. But ultimately, the geopolitical and geoeconomic factors, they are also going to be a big push to see how the global economy is going to come to deal with these kind of evolving tensions between nations. I would just like to add give one footnote, and maybe then I would like to see if any of the panelists would like to elaborate on that or would have their any views. You see, one of the issues you remember in first I mentioned about having the depth of the currency, and that is why we are seeing that despite the rise of China and India, their currency is not being used at a faster pace that they would like to see. I think one issue that we're going to see with the rise of, say, what is known as central bank digital currency. As I said, suppose somebody sitting in Saudi Arabia or Bangladesh wants to buy, say, $10 million worth of yuan, and currently they find it very difficult because that much of physical cash may not exist in the two countries. What is going to happen? Suppose the central bank digital currency, where China has taken a lead, that has become more prominent. And so thereby just sitting anywhere in the world, you should be able to buy those currency, maybe using online system. And whether that could be used as a route, to challenge the supremacy of the US dollar, this is something probably we need to think about. But again, the problem then there will be is all about, how the global rules are going to be defined, when you deal with the financial transaction or trade transactions. So that also remains a challenge. So there are a lot of issues I think will evolve and already evolving or unfolding. And we need to find out, where a country like Bangladesh can manage everything and still can, use it to sort of, advance its economic growth and development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. MA Sayeed. Dr. Shaukat Ali, you listen to Dr. Raja and Dr. Jamal, and they have elaborated their own understanding and beliefs in the field of economics and world trade and commerce, everything they have. And Dr. Jamaluddin is still adhering to the principle of hegemony. On the other hand, Dr. MA Sayeed, he defined the whole thing and tried to redefine the structure, whatever it is. And taking all this together, what is your understanding at the same time? How do you suggest the policymakers in Bangladesh about the economic debacle? Dr. Shaukadan.
Okay, thank you for asking this question. It is very precise question that you asked me. The word itself, hegemony, I have no problem with that because probably Dr. Jamaluddin want to bring the hegemon or hegemony, this term, not only the influence of US dollar, US culture, language, or some other geopolitical influence, everything together, if you package it, then you can say it's a hegemony. Hegemon, nothing wrong with that term, particular term. What Dr. Saidi, Dr. Jaidi Sattar says regarding Bangladesh, I said one thing. Bangladesh get benefit out of which system? Is it Chinese? Is it Russian? Or is the free market economy? Don't forget, we have 1975. I was a student that time in a different political hegemony, a system. I was part of it. We have seen that. I don't want to discuss all those things. However, when you open the market, denationalize, we get the benefit out of it. Therefore, for the benefit of this small country, Bangladesh, we should be try to find out if SAARC is good for our local currency, business, terms of trade, we could improve. Let's try it, no problem. But as Dr. Jamaluddin said, that it failed because of the political will. He is absolutely right. It failed because of the political intention. Nobody wants the idea from Bangladesh. That is a political kind of hegemony that, wow, India is here. When President Rahman introduced this idea, India said, okay, we agree with you. Why not make this center headquarter in New Delhi? And Zia declined. Eventually, President Ershad tried in 1984 and did little, success and all those things. Listen, I have no problem with the doing all those trading with the local currency. As Dr. Rajak mentioned very clearly, that we are exporting in India on the average only $2 billion. But the India is sucking our blood using $16 billion exporting in Bangladesh. Let's talk about the taka and the rupiah. I have surplus, the Indian got surplus $14 billion, say, for on the average Bangladeshi taka. And we have only $2 billion worth of Indian rupee. Let's say I want to buy cotton from Pakistan. How I can do it? Where I'll get the money? I need $4 billion worth of Indian rupee from Pakistan if I want to buy the cotton. The Pakistan will say, I'm not going to take Indian rupee. Well, the first problem will be, as Dr. Rajan said, that I have to buy the currency. Where I can get the currency? Whether I have to buy borrowing with a high interest from Indian rupee, or I have to buy from Indian rupee currency with a high money. Be careful, compare with the dollar expense. The cost of borrowing or cost of lending or cost of whatever terms between the taka and rupee you are getting, you make sure that you are getting advantage on it with the rupee. Well, is it possible? You can buy any amount of US dollar from London market or New York market. No restriction. Is it possible for Indian government? Is it possible for Chinese government to give you free hold, free flexibility, a Bank of China, to give me 1 trillion worth of Chinese yuan? Whoa, we forget it. It's completely controlled, manipulated, and in front of all kinds of advances in China. Look at this. We have business with China. Again, listen, terms of trade, what is the terms of trade? You know, there is a small formula. Price of X times the total export over price of import times the total import. Then you find the denominator and the numerator, who is influencing what. Then you bring the percentage and you will get the whether your terms of trade is improving or not. It's a very simple formula. All economists knows that. Look at this now. We are doing business with India. We are getting all the deficits in our current account. We are doing business with China, all the deficits. China is not taking our products. They want to product everything in Bangladesh. It's a very important factor of determining exchange rate between the countries. As you know, exchange rate is nothing but a relative terms between the two currencies. So we are a loser. Forget Russia. So therefore, when you do the equal terms of trade, say for example, as Dr. Rajak mentioned, and we know that, in less than $2 billion worth of goods and services I can import from India, or equivalent amount of goods and services I can export to India, which is X equal M. No problem. It's a balanced rate. I have no problem. 100 years, I mean, at least 50 years, the East European country did with the, the Russian model. Bilateral goods and, services between all those closed economy, which is possible nowadays. Look at the United States. The United States and Bangladesh, Dr. Jaidi did not mention it. We are getting all the benefits, almost $15 billion benefits out of doing business with United States, which means in simple terms, the United States eating less and making sure Bangladesh is eating more, which means the United States taking all the current account deficits and Bangladesh getting better terms doing business with the United States. Is it possible with China? The answer is no. I can tell you right now. Is it possible with Russia? Oh, you forget it. Is it possible with India? No. How you can do? How I can use the Indian rupee? How I can use the Russian ruble? Or how I can use the centralized controlled yuan from China? Impossible thing. All they are doing to protect their own interest and their terms of trade. Therefore, in terms of the exchange rate, it is always in favor of them. Look, there is a question, all you guys economists, you know that, PPP, purchasing power parity. This problem started with China between the trade when United States start in 1980s and 90s with China. You will be surprised. The China knows how to manipulate. It is not the purchasing power. What is purchasing power parity? $1 burger in New York or USA will be the same dollar terms in China. It is a purchasing power parity, no matter how much yuan you said. But you know, Dr. Rajak mentioned already, they devalue the currency so that they can export more and import less. Exactly, they are doing this type of game with doing business with the Bangladesh and all these areas. This is the reason I said the political will and political structure is very important. Look at Bangladesh. What is the Bangladesh governor said? Bangladesh bank governor said 3 days ago, oh, after declaring this policy, if the government kick me out, so it be, I'll give it out or I'll resign. I encourage his, his courage. I really appreciate his courage. After a long time, somebody said something. Look at the United States. Federal Reserve is an autonomous body. The gentleman now, the chairman, Dr. Jerome Powell, is appointed by Donald Trump. When he appointed Jerome Powell, within 3 months, he started to fight because he does not want to reduce the rate of interest. Well, look at this now. President Biden is a Democrat. He keep it. Don't forget the Dr. Greenwald. He was over 25 years the chairman of the Federal Reserve of the United States, appointed by the Republican. And he continued his flexible muscle, whatever he thinks is better for US currency and US economy, not the government in power. But look at the Bangladesh. A single person handling. I don't want to go detailed politics. I do generally all those things, but now not. I want try to be a little bit precise policy. But look, the economic policy, commercial policy, trade policy depends on the willingness of the government. If you have a bad government with a self-centered interest, you cannot give the preference of the national interest of the economy. Therefore, Bangladesh, whatever it is said, I just want to remind Dr. Zaid Sattar, he is a very practical, pragmatic economist, more well-researched and experienced person, of course, better than me, because he does all those things in Bangladesh. I am not. But look at this. You suffer yourself. Look at these Bangladesh commercial banks. Look at this, what happened last 10 years. I surprised why did Dr. Sattar did not raise his voice. Then listen, leave the bank's policy alone. We have a first class. Dr. Razak, we have a beautiful policy of Federal Reserve government, how to manage it. We are a part of global economy. We are the member of the SWIFT. Therefore, we have to take this some reforms. Whatever government, Khaleda or Rashad did it. But it is an international standard we followed. But what happened now? I am shocked and surprised why Brother Jamaluddin and all the economists did not raise their voice. A governor hands up. Look at this, what happened Federal Reserve in the United States. Do you think if Biden cry to Dr. Jerome Powell, they don't raise the interest or reduce the interest? No, it's up to him. It is up to him. Look at the inflation. As I say all the time, after the COVID, the whole world give their economy to run it smoothly to the economist. And the economists all around the world, including the United States, did an excellent job. Of course, the United States, the best policy after the COVID, the economic policy and recovered. They recovered. So what I am saying that, as I said from the beginning, I want to stick. It's always good to have a friendship between the small countries, with Muslim countries, with the African countries, with the similar economies, or regional, due to regional politics. But be careful. You should not abandon your policy because you don't like any other government or the governmental policy and, ruin your economy. And be careful, before you say anything to any government economic policy, control your own economy. Think about what you are doing. What is going on into your economy? If you cannot control, do not look at the Ukraine war, Russian war, or Gaza policy of the United States. Think about your own economic policy. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Dr. Jayadi Sattar, you listen to all the three panelists. And
thank you very much. So much has been said.
Now everything lies in you because
very little actually lies with me right now. Thank you very much for inviting me again. And so I'll limit myself to about 2 or 3 points that I gathered from statements of all these very distinguished panelists. First of all, the reason I felt uneasy with the hegemony expression was because I tried to describe that the Bretton Woods system and the predominant dollar during the period of 75 years facilitated trade and investment flows in the world around and gave income growth as well as poverty reduction during this whole 70 75 years. Of course, the international financial architecture itself is not that simple. It's a very complex architecture. And behind that architecture lies institutions, stable, credible institutions, which all of you have pointed out, that lies in the United States. And that gives the dollar the prominence, the credibility, the reliability for so many decades. And that has transformed the world economy and facilitated, trade and investment flows. So that is one thing we have to acknowledge before going into the hegemonic. The hegemonic idea comes in when this international financial architecture is weaponized, when it is used to undermine certain segment of the global trade and investment order, when it, from being a facilitator of international trade and investment flow, it restricts certain segments of the world economy from performing their normal economic activities. So that is my uneasiness with the term hegemony, but there are elements in there. Now, you see, as Dr. Razak mentioned, we are in this 21st century and digital age, and we are also entering the AI, artificial intelligence age. Digital currencies are emerging. And with the emergence of digital currencies and central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, United States still doesn't have one. China has gone ahead. Other countries have gone ahead. United States is still examining the effectiveness, the operational possibility of CBDC. But in time, I think it's natural that we might have these CBDCs, including in America. So alternatives to the dollar system could emerge in this 21st century digital age and AI age. So that is something we have to recognize. The potential for alternatives to emerge is much greater today than it was, let's say, 20, 25 years ago. So that is one thing. Now, coming back to Bangladesh, which Dr. Razak pretty much laid out, we have, the largest trading partners of Bangladesh are India and China. They are the largest source of our imports. Roughly 35% of our imports come from these two. But we should, and then also the largest destination of our exports is Europe and North America, though new destinations, what we call non-traditional destinations, are emerging, like in East Asia, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. In Latin America, Brazil, Argentina. These are countries that are emerging as, larger export destinations. Now, in this particular, landscape where Bangladesh has strong trading relationships with China and India, they don't see eye to eye on the geopolitical stage. But as far as Bangladesh is concerned, we need to have a strong relationship with both. Although we have huge bilateral deficits, trade deficits with both countries, and because the idea of currency swap, the idea of using alternative currencies like the Indian rupees or the Chinese yuan. Indeed, Bangladesh already engaged in a huge payment of its debt service to Russia using the renminbi. China and Russia agreed to receive payments with renminbi rather than the US dollar when there was a sanction on Russia. In the case of India, again, because of the bilateral trade deficit being huge, India has been accommodative. But up to a point, you can't expect, if there is a $16 billion of imports from India and $2 billion of exports, you can't expect India to say, okay, we'll accept all, payment in Indian rupees. That is unlikely to happen. So they have given, as a start off, they've given a $2 billion limit for transaction in Indian currency, which is partly facilitating of trade. But there are also issues relating to conversion costs. You know, there are fees related to conversion which have to be taken into account. But the main point is that if you have a bilateral trade which is balanced, it's much easier to arrive at a currency swap arrangement or using alternative currencies. But when you have bilateral trade deficits that are significantly huge, in China, in 1 year we imported $24 billion and exported less than $1 billion. So you can't expect to be trading with China on yuan or any other currency. So these are the limits of using alternative currencies, or currency swaps as they call it. So that's the other problem. In which case, I come to the point that Bangladesh has to walk the diplomatic tightrope in maintaining strong trading relations. Bangladesh is now integrated with the world economy and the world trading system much more than it was in the 25 years ago. Bangladesh's development has been driven by its export success in the case of ready-made garments, and of course the remittances. That's also part of the world trading system, under Mode 4 of the GATS, General Agreement of Trade and Services. So Bangladesh has no option but to maintain sound diplomatic relationships with trading partners that might not see eye to eye, and then in the geopolitical space, they might be rivals. So that is where I was talking about Bangladesh, doing the balancing act. And this is where I think strong, very strategic diplomatic initiatives and strategies will be needed for Bangladesh to maintain its the export-led development that we have now arrived at, that we have chosen as our development strategy. And it's both trade and services. And I'd like to think of remittance as an export of factor services. So Bangladesh's two pillars are externally driven. Exports of ready-made garments, on the one hand, we are not doing much when it comes to non-garment exports, which we call the challenge of trade export diversification. We are not doing that great on that. But so we have to maintain these two pillars, two drivers of Bangladesh's economic growth: ready-made garment exports, remittances, and of course our agricultural sector, which really has given Bangladesh the food self-sufficiency that really gives us, completely eliminates our reliance on food aid. It is long history now. Food aid is history. So we have to continue on this path and let the new financial infrastructure develop, or the architecture develop, as we go forward with more digital currencies or artificial intelligence driven currencies that might be replacing the dollar in certain ways. It's quite possible. It's quite possible. However, what is best for Bangladesh and for developing economies in the South is not necessarily to align ourselves with one side or the other. That would be, I think, not very helpful for Bangladesh. We need to, that is where we need to do the balancing act in order to leverage the advantages, the benefits that the world economy provides. The domestic market is no comparison to the world market. And Bangladesh has to realize that, to keep its access to the world market as much as possible, even after it graduates out of the LDC status. And Bangladesh, our research shows that Bangladesh is quite competitive, not just in ready-made garment exports, but in so many other still labor-intensive products. It's not limited to ready-made garments, but we have a challenge in our policy, particularly our trade policy orientation, which tends to give more, it discriminates against exports. To be fair, we have done the research to show that although we talk about diversifying our exports, we are really not giving the kind of the incentive necessary for exporting versus selling in the domestic market. And we keep saying that the domestic market, in spite of the fact that it's growing fast, and then by 2030, Bangladesh is going to become the 9th largest consumer market, it still is no match to the world economy, which is currently $100 trillion and is probably going to be $120 trillion by 2030. So Bangladesh has to, my final point is, Bangladesh has to walk the tightrope, do the balancing act, maintain good trading relations, and as well as investment relations with all sides, rather than taking sides. So that is, I think, my concluding point. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jaidi Sattar. Now I turn to Dr. Jamaluddin. This is ending part of the talk show. You have only 3 minutes. Mr. Jamaluddin.
I think we should, given our declared foreign policy, we should deal with the people the way Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib followed, and we come to that. In that case, Bangladesh should not be a part of the international game. I think we should look 20 crore people so that their livelihood and their living standard we want to improve. Given that target, we should formulate our policy and next action program. Because the government, newly elected government, they have formed the cabinet. Now they should form a team with different ministries as a consultant or advisor, so that the Commerce Ministry, Finance Ministry, Foreign Ministry, everybody should need help. So our people who are working as a professional, they should utilize their merit and expertise. This is my request to the new government.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jamaluddin. Dr. MA Raja, what is your last focus?
Thank you. In my last 3 minutes, I think I would like to make 3 or 4 quick points. But now I'm also going to refer some of the issues to the Bangladesh situation inspired by Dr. Jaidi Sattar's, the last intervention. Okay, here are the things. The first thing is, I think these geopolitical and geoeconomic issues, they are, in terms of the challenge that we are facing, is growing, it's unfolding in nature. And I agree fully with Dr. Jaidi Sattar that we need to be careful. We don't need to be orbit of any major geoeconomic players that is going to undermine or affect our economic interest or economic development. That's the simple thing. The second point that I would like to mention is this, that sometimes, the way the problem narrative is given to us can be quite misleading. For example, under the current economic context, sometimes it is being argued or it is being postulated in that manner that Bangladesh's crisis is dollar shortage. It's not about the dollar or dollar value or what kind of currency we have. The problem that Bangladesh currently has is our low reserve. Okay, so that means our capacity to export more, our capacity to get more remittances out of our migrant workforce, that is causing the main trouble. With that one, I would also like to highlight the fact that I don't think imports, whether those are coming from India or China, are necessarily bad because of their source. I would think that those imports are actually benefiting Bangladesh, because in many cases we use intermediate imports or capital goods coming from India and China, and we're using it for our domestic production, but also we're using them to export elsewhere. So I would always value, that those imports as well. So I'm not concerned about the import side of the thing, or whether it's coming from any particular country. The third point is, so the fundamental problem that we have, our capacity to export has been quite low, really, really limited. Compare ourselves with a country like Malaysia or Vietnam. Malaysia has got a population of 31 million. We have a population of 170 million, right? And you look at the overall export in absolute terms, don't even compare in terms of GDP ratio. In absolute terms, Malaysia has got more than $220 billion worth of goods they exported. Bangladesh, we did only $55 billion export. Okay. And with Vietnam, perhaps we should not be comparing ourselves at all. Vietnam with 90 million population, half of ours, they are exporting close to $400 billion worth of export. So the point is, our overall export volume has been quite low. For a country like Bangladesh, we should by now be comfortably in the club of those countries that are exporting more than $100 billion worth of goods. And I'm only talking about the goods that is. So the problem we have, we need to expand our exports. And in that context, Dr. Jayadi Sattar has especially mentioned the problem is we're doing good in the government sector, not in non-government sector. We have our competitive advantage. But the trouble is, here we have sort of made, or our policies have been deeply flawed. All policies that you can think of, trade policy, we have taken a protectionist stance. If you think in that way, Bangladesh is currently world's one of the most protected economies. If you consider the tariff protection that is being given into the economy, and that has harmed our export sector. So that's one problem. We have seen our foreign exchange rate regime, that is also deeply flawed. We have tried to maintain a rate that is basically untenable if you want to promote the export competitiveness. And that is why we're into this kind of system. Our interest policy in the recent past, was also deeply flawed, and recently, they have tried to correct it. So the point again is, we have not been careful about, taking the right kind of policies. So not by looking into de-dollarization or who is doing what, or whether we should be trading in Indian or Chinese currency. Our fundamental problem is we need to build our export response. That capacity will have to be generated, and their policies also kind of did not help us. So we need to get into it. And I think my final point is, once we're able to manage these economic policies in a better way, and Dr. Jayadi Sattar has pointed out, if we're kind of doing a good tight roping work, then essentially it will be possible for us to leverage these big players in a manner that is going to benefit us. You see, if we're going to say that, okay, fine, within our reserve, central bank reserve, we're going to maintain a certain amount of Indian rupees and Chinese yuan, that will also give us a bit of capacity to ask for certain kind of investment that these countries are capable of doing. Maybe they can invest into Bangladesh export sector, and from there we can export to the rest of the world. You see, so I would think that geopolitical issues, the currency hegemony, these are going to affect all countries in the world. But for Bangladesh, that is not the pressing concern at this stage. The pressing concern is our export in absolute terms. That is small, and we need to do much better in terms of undertaking right kind of policies, making right kind of institutions, and also undertaking right kind of reforms. We can then boost our export response. I think then only we'll be able to, I would say, that minimize the global tension that we are seeing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chairman Ajak. Dr. Shaukat, we are moving towards turning the time. Please, you have 3 to 4 minutes, please.
As I said earlier, that we must address our Bangladesh economic policy. All this discussion is boils down that if we try to do something good about it, then it is our promised land, Bangladesh. We love all these countries. But what happened in Bangladesh? Dr. Zaidi Sattar said by 2030, Bangladesh can import a huge amount of goods and services. But my question is how we can afford to pay it. As Dr. Rajak mentioned, that if we cannot afford to export goods and services all around the country, Dr. Zaidi says, India, Russia, and China. Look at this. Their whole pattern, we have experienced within a couple of years. They have a surplus, we have a deficit. We have to think about twice that how long we'll continue. Only with the United States, we have surplus. United States got the deficits. We have very small amount of FDI. Listen, this conversation, if you wide open, then, as I said earlier, the Bangladesh economic policy must need very strong reform. Look at this FDI, foreign direct investment. We must need to create an environment. It is only 4.5 billion. Who paid it? Who put it? United States. Nobody else. Now, if you go for foreign bonds, as you know as an economist, the government sell the bonds, treasury bonds. If you have no value, you have no regulation, you have no market reforms, your exchange rate is, goes to the bottom, and you cannot control your inflation because of your corruption. You cannot create an environment for good trades and commerce. You'll be kicked out in the international competition. It's simple as this. Therefore, as I said, yes, expectation is better, but we need the market reforms as prescribed by World Bank and IMF. They are the watchdog that what we are going in this country. But to me, the way the economic reforms, this central bank handling, our Bank of Bangladesh handling, the local currency, exchange rate, inflation, GDP growth, and the banking policy itself is not healthy. We must immediately, we need to control, as Dr. Jamaluddin said, it is our economists, it is our obligation to voice up, give them a good research policy, give them some good suggestion. Look, our political leaders, I'm not blaming here this particular segment, this particular issues. I want to be very, very precise on the in the subject. But it is the economist, it is our obligation to give them good advice that your policy is totally wrong. That the way you're doing business is not the way it's supposed to be doing the business. You cannot create an environment where people are not coming to do the FDI, foreign direct investment. It's the last 10, 15 years, the foreign direct investment. Dr. Zaidi is working in Bangladesh. Brother, why you don't, go with other economists and give them help? Look at the Singapore. Look at the Malaysia. Look at even India, even Pakistan. Compare the foreign direct investment. Hundreds of $billions going into the economy of India as a foreign direct. Where we are? Why it takes so corrupted, long-term, times consuming to open a business? If a foreign direct investment goes in Bangladesh, what is said? Where is our accountability? After all the discussion, global and all those things, if we concentrate in Bangladesh, my only one advice, reform the economy. Give the economy to the economist, the financial expert. Let them freedom, give them freedom to run the Bank of Bangladesh. And the Bangladesh, I still believe, no matter what political left, right, up, down says, I believe we have a very good economist, especially young, talented economists. They know how to preserve the protect of Bangladesh economy. Therefore, after all the discussion, Jamal Bhai introduced all those things. I learned from Dr. Jaidi. Of course, Dr. Rajak mentioned very lot of excellent points and all those things. I agreed with him almost 80%. That to help Bangladesh economy, yes, we can try from outside of the country. The only one request, forget the political, all the chaos and confusion, to protect the way we are now. I am drawing the attention of the Dr. Jaidi. The way we are now, the situation, the economic condition, the reserve, brother, we don't have any more $45 billion reserve the way when I was discussing with Dr. Sinha 1 year ago. Be careful. You created a very big consumerism. It is correct. That creates a problem. You are eating, but not producing. So there are a lot of problems. We need exchange rate stability, control the inflation, control the GDP growth, control the corruption. We have to be careful with the capital flight. We have to put a regulation. As of now, right now, we have no time. No money cannot go out. Look at this. I have a student here. Cannot bring the dollar to pay a semester. Dr. Jaidi, Dr. Rajak will know. In London, I have a lot of children. I know them. They cannot bring money to pay the semester. Their names are rejected. They are not any longer a student. Where we are going? It is the situation right now. Therefore, what we are hoping, I said it to Brother Jamaluddin, listen, we don't need politics. We know all the politicians since independence. I was a student, a foot soldier. I have left, right, out. All this information and, I never did politics, but I learned it. Brother, we have no time. You are a president or executive, drawing attention to the Brother Jamaluddin. I said it to you earlier, person to person event. You have a big organization on Bangladesh Economic Association. Why not you telling? Why you are not telling? Why you hiding? Why you saying shy away? Not telling the truth. Say what is black is black. What is white before it is too late. I will blame. I will curse you guys, those who are living in Bangladesh, that you did not raise all the universities. Look at the Economist. I did not see an article published giving a suggestion that why we are getting, we need reform. Look at the banks. Look at the bank. You printed 90,000 crores of Bangladeshi taka only 3 months ago. Before that, you published 50,000 crores of... No, one point, please. I'm very sorry. 50,000 crores of takas. Why Jamaluddin did not say that it will not bring down the inflation, it will increase the inflation? What kind of economist, brother, we are? It's our land. This is our promised land. We have it. Please go forward from now on. Please count on me. If you want me to discuss all those things, I can do it. But listen, I am warning you guys because you are working very hard. Dr. Jaidi Sattar working every day. He knows much better than me what is going on. What is the bottom line in Bangladesh? Why he did not raise his voice? We are economists. We have no political affiliation. We love our country, our responsibility to the land. That is our promised land, Bangladesh. And we did suffer very good. Don't forget our brother, those who did sacrifice in the past.
Okay.
Big economists. I respect them. I hope for the best. As I said, the hegemony is not only the dollar hegemony, it's a political hegemony going on in Bangladesh. We have to tackle both Bangladesh hegemony and the foreign hegemony if we can.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I was a little bit emotional, you guys. I learned a lot of things from you guys. Many thanks. Thank you, sir.
Well, we are at the final stage, and now I request Dr. Jaid Sattar. You draw a conclusion.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sinha, for the opportunity for these final words, the final 3 minutes, and I don't think I'll take that much. I acknowledge and thank you, Dr. Shaukat, for the encouraging words for economists in Bangladesh. I have to, thank all the distinguished panelists for having said everything that, I also believe in. But my final words, of course, have to be, again, in agreement with all of you, that this is now the time for some structural, deep-rooted structural reforms. And a new government is just the right, presents the right opportunities for some deep-seated reforms that have been long overdue. And I would say this would be round two. Round one of our reforms took place in the early 1990s, when the country, the economy, chose the right direction. The economy changed direction from a closed, inward-looking, import substituting economy to an outward-looking, export-oriented, and freer open trade economy in the 1990s. But then let me stop there and say, we stopped that liberalization phase that we adopted in the early 1990s. And today, what we are reaping the benefits of the reforms that took place in the 1990s. There is a study, there's a World Bank study, which tells us that the current, the prosperity that we have seen in the last 10 to 15 years actually is sort of taking, the benefits of the reforms that were already done. So now is the time for round two, for another set of deep-seated reforms. And I agree with all our distinguished panelists that the time has come and we need to do something. Here, as a trade economist, as a development economist specializing in trade policy issues, I have been looking at Bangladesh's trade policy evolution for the last 30 plus years. And I have said what Dr. Razak, he came in much later, he's a young economist. I've been in the country for the last 30 plus years, explaining to whoever would listen that our tariff and protection policy is not mutually exclusive to exports. So exports and our protection policy are not mutually exclusive. The understanding in the policy-making circles was that tariff is about imports, and export is export. But we now, I have been, like a broken record, I've been saying it again and again over the last 20 years, that it is our tariff structure and our protection structure, which is very high, Dr. Razak mentioned that, that is actually undermining our capability to export more. And I agree, Bangladesh's export should be in the range of $100 billion, not $55, $60 billion. But then why is it not happening? Because we are relying on just one export group, ready-made garments. All the other 1,500 export products that we export on average every year, we are not really exploiting the competitive advantage of those 1,500 products because they are being given an incentive system, a trade policy orientation that does not really encourage exporting. It encourages selling in the domestic market. So that is not going to be helpful to have a dynamic, diversified export basket. And that is where the first challenge lies. And I have been writing, month after month, whatever little, we are not university researchers, professors. We actually have to do practical policy and discuss practical policy. So we write a limited number of papers. But we do publish in the popular press. So this is the challenge right before us is there. The research has been done. We have identified the problems that Bangladesh is facing in order to expand its exports. And if the policy reform is taken right now with determination, with commitment, we can then become the $100 billion export country that Dr. Razak was talking about. And But if we miss that, we will be losing an opportunity. And the current geopolitical fragmentation, let's say this US-China divide that is taking place in the geopolitical landscape, that presents some opportunity for Bangladesh, because China is going to is already losing out. I would say 100. Some estimates say they'd be losing $100 billion of ready-made garment exports in the next 3 years, 5 years, and of that, some will be coming to Bangladesh. There's no question about that. Bangladesh has now been acknowledged as a highly competitive exporter of ready-made garments. Bangladeshi entrepreneurs are regarded as very capable, and Bangladesh has tremendous amount of excess capacity in the garment industry, largest excess capacities compared to any competitor that we talk about.
Thank you very much.
Opportunities are there. We need to exploit them. Reforms are necessary.
We are about to end this very talk show. Before ending the talk show, I have to summarize in few words. So what the synopsis they created here, because you understand all of them are the economists of the first order and thinker of the first order, at the same time patriot of the first order. And what they think, what they believe, they candidly expressed here. But thing is that whether the government in Bangladesh or the policymaker in Bangladesh will listen to them, it is up to them. But reality speaks, unless and until the economist or any intellectual people or intellectual arena, any field, concerned people must be listened to. Otherwise, no real development can take place. And we believe with this talk show, we pass a message to the policymaker in Bangladesh, including the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Please listen to the words of those who love the country at the cost of their sweat and study. And thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will meet you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And